Welcome to our next lecture. We are continuing with the World Heritage Sites, part 4. If you remember, last time we have discussed the outstanding universal value, and we also had discussed the 10 criteria that are considered by UNESCO for approving or accepting a site as a World Heritage Site. Now, let us just take a quick look at whatever the 10 criteria. You must remember the very key essence of each criteria. So, let us say first example was masterpiece, then the interchange of values, testimony of cultures and typology of the built heritage, land use, association with ideas, tradition and etc., natural phenomena, because 1 to 6 were the cultural heritage and 7 to 10 were the natural heritage. So, 7th was the natural phenomena, 8th was the ecological and biological process, 9th natural habitats, and 10 is the biological diversity. We also has discussed the various examples to explain what are the how this criteria, and as we discussed that one particular site can be more than one criteria. Now, we also must remember that while discussing the outstanding universal value, there are 3 pillars of that. One is that which is meets the criteria, and the second is the integrity and authenticity, and third is the protection and the management. So, today we will talk about we also have already discussed the criteria thing. We will talk about the integrity and authenticity part, and then we will discuss about the management in our next lecture. So, the topics mainly I will cover in this lecture is what is authenticity and what is integrity, authenticity and outstanding universal value, what is the relationship between that, and authenticity and significance, assessing authenticity, compromise authenticity, authenticity and its attributes, and also integrity and its components. So, it's a little it's not so easy, but we will see that how with the various examples we can sort of try to explain the concept of authenticity, integrity, because it is not only important for the World Heritage Site to talk about authenticity, integrity and the values, it is also important for any heritage resource we talk about. So, let us talk about first authenticity and integrity. Authenticity is generally the measure of genuineness or credibility, and integrity is the measurement of the totality or completeness. So, that means how much of the original remains and how much remains. And when we are talking about the original, we also have discussed it does not mean only one period of time, it can be several periods of history, but how much of that original remains and how much remains. These are the basic essence of when we are talking about authenticity and integrity. So, these are important to explain the heritage value of the site satisfactorily as per the original. Now, let us see understanding the authenticity. For example, we see here Disneyland, California. What here we see? It is a replica or a fantasy castle which has been made there. So, definitely it is not a castle. So, one can say that it is not authentic. Yes, it is not authentic when if we consider that as a castle, but Disneyland, the entire concept of Disneyland is in fairyland and illusion. That is the purpose of a Disneyland. So, in the context of Disneyland, it is not fake, because it is an illusory castle that they are trying to make, and it is not trying to pose that it is a castle. So, we can't say that it is not authentic. In concept of Disneyland or in the context of Disneyland is absolutely fine. We can't compare that with another royal castle or the series of castle or the number of castles which are there, like here in the France we see a castle. So, that is a castle, and this is an illusion of a castle, and which is the purpose of Disneyland. So, we can't say it is not authentic. In the context of Disneyland, this is proper, genuine and authentic. So, this context we must remember when we are talking about authenticity. So, example we see here, there are these different aspects of the World Heritage Site: OUV, attributes, authenticity, protection, management. All these are very important, and we have to understand that what is the relation between outstanding universal value in case of World Heritage Site and the attributes, and how they are related to authenticity. So, these are the major thing. In case of World Heritage Site, it will be outstanding universal value. In case of other site, it will be the value or the significance. So, values, whether outstanding or not, attributes and authenticity, we have to understand the relationship between them. Let us see what is the authenticity. Authenticity means the wholeness. Are all the elements necessary to tell the full story of the site? Are they there? Is the property of sufficient size to hold all feature and processes necessary to convey the significance? And intactness. Asking about the condition of the property in relation to the threats to its existence and any risk in the environment surrounding the property. So, this wholeness, or whether the size is enough to show all the necessary features, and the intactness. These are important things or parts of authenticity. For example, if you see here Konark Sun Temple in Orissa, we see that there is a very old picture of Konark, but when the major temple, the main temple has already collapsed, we know that Konark has crumbled. So, we see a part is standing there, and the Konark as we see today, it is a World Heritage Site, and there has been no sort of an attempt to rebuild the part which has been demolished. They are keeping it as it is, the main part, because it has collapsed, and the other parts are there either with roof or without the roof, whatever form it has been found, and it has been kept, and the relationship with the site and everything has been kept as it is. Konark is a very good example of authenticity and how it has been preserved by Archaeological Survey of India. We can go further into the detail. I have already explained that the significance and authenticity. I have explained the concept earlier of that the horse which is there and how the horse has been propped up. It hasn't been, his legs hasn't been rebuilt or replicated, but it has been propped up to brought to the height, so that it gives the concept or restores the original concept that it is the a horse driving the chariot of the sun god. So, it is reviving the concept. So, as I say, the Konark is that way, that significance and authenticity is very important. So, let us see what it says. The ability to understand the value attributed to the heritage depends on the degree to which information sources about this value may be understood as credible and truthful. So, the horse has been taken up there. So, the value attributed can be understood properly. So, the information is there, and that much only has been kept like that. The knowledge and understanding of these sources of information in relation to the original and subsequent characteristics of the cultural heritage and their meaning, and the requisite basis for assessing all aspects of authenticity. So, we must try to understand that how these are important relationship between the significance and authenticity. We will deliberate. So, basically, if you try to see major points, the authenticity in creativity and form. I think the way the horse has been propped up, it shows the creativity, because there could have been many ways to keep that, there are ways. So, authenticity in creativity and form, authenticity in material and history, and authenticity in continuity of the social cultural concept, and that is also a very challenging, that how in creativity and form and materials, and how the social cultural context, how the authenticity can be maintained. I will take an example which is not a World Heritage Site, but try to explain the relationship between the value, significance, authenticity and other. This is Coast Minar. Coast Minars are there in India and Pakistan. They are there along the routes, this Coast Minar. What are they? They are actually isolated structures in 1609, Emperor Jahangir ordered a small minaret-like monuments to be built at every course or every mile along the Grand Trunk Road. The course was an ancient measure of the territory distance which varied from time to time. During the period of Emperor Jahangir, the conventional course was measured between 2 miles 3 furlongs to 2 miles 5 furlongs. So, was a measurement along the thing. Independently, they are just structures, they do not have any religious significance or other. But when you see them in the context, that takes on a different meaning. So, let us see how we assess the course minar. First of all, if you see that the first as it is a sign, it is just a pile of bricks put in a very specific form, and it signifies the location of that particular place or the distance over the road. And so, that should come from the research and other things, that how these independent or a series of them are important, and that establishes the definition, because that course minar, it signifies a location, but the significance is that it is a road mark. And what is the value? Value is that it is essential to travelers, and that is how we have to assess that it is essential to travelers in that time, and in a continuity, a series of these course minars actually tell us a very important part, technology or the travelers, how it was important to them, and the systematic placement of the things, the distance measurement and other things. So, that is why we see that even because these course minars are all over, and there is a lot of pressure to if you widen the road and other things, people say what is this course minar, they are not so beautiful, and what is there, we can sort of take them and keep them away or demolish them and other. But one must understand that what is this course minar actually mean, and not in an isolation, but in totality. And if you can understand that from this relationship between the sign, signify, significance and value, then only we can sort of understand, if the assessment is proper, then only we can understand that what to do about it and how do we go about it. So, this assessment based on the research and the definition, particular context and the assessment is a very important process of this assessment and establishing the authenticity. So, assessing authenticity means for each cultural property, the attributes that have been identified as conveying the potential. In case of World Heritage Site, it will be the outstanding value. Outstanding universal value should be considered for the way they might be said truthfully convey or express that value. Truthfully convey or express that value. Authenticity is therefore a measure of how well the attributes convey potential outstanding universal value. Again and again I am saying, in case of World Heritage Site, it will be outstanding universal value, but it is also important for even if it is not a World Heritage Site. So, understand that what is the value of that resource. Let us take a World Heritage Site, which is Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat 2014. It is been declared inscribed as a World Heritage Site. So, let us see what are the criterion for that. It is an example of the artistic and technological height of the staple tradition. It is a very important part of a traditional water storage system and accessing the water. It was a part of the Saraswati river, and for centuries it was under the silt, and very recently it has been discovered, and now it is a part of the World Heritage Site. Criterion 4, an outstanding example of a subterranean steep well construction and represents a prime example of an architectural type of water resource and storage system. So, under these two criteria, that steep well of Rani Ki Vav has been inscribed at the World Heritage Site. Now, let us see, while doing that, while preparing the nomination brochure and the justifying the case of Rani Ki Vav, how this value, significance and authenticity, which is a very important part of making a case for World Heritage Site, how it has been done. So, we must understand that the concept between value versus significance. identification of the meaning of an object, that is what is the heritage, and association of the value to object through a meaning. And we must understand that meaning and significance, it is also not an individual meaning and significance, it comes from the society, from the people and the various stakeholders, because this staple has been very important for this particular community in that type of context, and it was also a place for social gathering, people used to interact and other, and they had various forms of thing. Now, when it was placed as the World Heritage Site, what is also important is the tangibly is the staple, beautifully sculptures and other things are there. But it has to be, to prove that it is outstanding value, it had to be compared with other type of staples or other staples with which also has the same meaning, and to show that it is the value and significance and how it is outstanding in this particular typology of the structure. So, there is a relationship, there is a comparative study of the properties of similar meaning. So, we have to understand the properties, we have to understand that how these properties or attributes contribute to the value and what is the significance of meaning that to the society as a whole. And that actually, so the conservation of staple, or in this particular case Rani Ki Vav, is based on the recognized qualities, significance and authenticity of a property. Recognized quality, significance and authenticity of the property. So, that means there should be some sources of information which should be true and credible, and from that structure and between that information we have to find out that what are the qualities and characteristics and how they sort of show or how bring out the authenticity of the structure. And this is a process which is very important to understand. So, there is a document, because even over the years that how do we understand the authenticity, what are the characteristics or what are the attributes have been changing a lot. But Nara document is the one which actually talks a lot about this authenticity. Authenticity is a measure of the degree to which the values of a heritage property may be understood to be truthfully, genuinely and credibly. I have already mentioned that, expressed by the attributes carrying the value. So, I have explained that there is a relationship between the attributes, the value and the significance. Authenticity refers to the credibility or truthfulness of information related to the original and subsequent characteristics of cultural heritage property that comprise its OUV. So, depends on why, which attributes are important for making or putting it as a World Heritage Sites or outstanding value, that are very important. What are the attributes of that and what it signifies and how much they are authentic, or what is the original, what to what degree. So, that actually is what is authenticity. That is what Nara document discusses. Now, initially there were 4 aspects which were generally considered to understand authenticity. They were design, material, setting and workmanship. But over the years, as more and more other type of structures from various other continents, Southeast Asian countries, Asian countries, India and other places came, there was an understanding or realization that these 4 aspects are not enough to explain the authenticity of a heritage resource. So, it was updated, these attributes were updated, and now the attributes of authenticity include form and design, materials and substance, use and function, tradition, techniques and the management system, because depending on the tradition in a local context also things can change, location and setting, language and other forms of intangible heritage, spirit and the feeling, and other internal and external. So, now the attributes, the aspects for considering the attributes for considering the authenticity has become much more broader, and there are more aspects which can be taken for consideration in the authenticity and attributes. But also we must understand that authenticity is not a value. We are not declaring a site as a World Heritage or of a heritage resource because of authenticity we are ascribing it for is value. So, authenticity is not a value. Properties do not merit inscription on the World Heritage Site simply because they are greatly authentic. I mean, just being a very authentic does not mean it can sort of qualify for the to be described as a World Heritage Site. So, the values are important. So, it is a requirement. Rather, inscribed properties must demonstrate first their claim to outstanding universal value and then demonstrate that the attributes carrying related value are authentic, that is genuine, real, truthful and credible. So, I am quoting that. So, this is very important to understand. The authenticity itself is not an essential prerequisite for to be declared as a World Heritage Site. So, what is important is the values and the attributes and the how the attributes explain the value, and then we have to see that how much that they are, how much of that original remains, and that is a measure. So, these subtlety must be understood. I can explain or quote example of Elephant caves near Mumbai, and which are the cave architecture, very important one is a World Heritage Site. There is a lot of controversies protected by Archaeological Survey of India. There is a lot of controversy about the early measures which are taken for restoring Elephant caves. Now, let us see, and there is a doubt that whether many of the things were authentic. So, there is a doubt about the authenticity, but later on things have improved better. If you see that, if you see the old pictures of Elephant caves, you can see that what was the situation, we can see the columns which are there were hardly there, and even now at this stage we know, we can see that many of the sculptures, they have not been rebuilt, they have been kept like that. Many of the columns have been sort of reconstructed or restored because they are important to carry the load and other thing. Now, that was necessary, but what is not, there is a controversy about Elephant is that many of the way initially the restoration took place, because it was originally in stone, later on the concrete was used and the concrete was given an effect that it looked like stone. And so, that was probably nowadays nobody will do that, because that is not authentic, it is a falsification, that concrete is meant to look like a stone and it giving a false impression. So, there that authenticity is at stake. So, that is what we call the compromised authenticity. The conjectural reconstruction, for example, in this case the conjectural reconstruction that this could have been like that might compromise the authenticity, it can impact on the ability to truthfully convey the meaning. So, as we can see that it is not important to sort of reconstruction for the sake of aesthetics and other things, rather it is better to keep the original wherever it is possible, and if there is an addition which is important, then to convey the truth and that it is done for a certain purpose. So, that distinction between what has been added and other is a very important part of the restoration. As we can see, even in Elephant, many of the sculptures which they are we have seen in Konark and other cases, but to reconstruct with concrete and give an impression of the stone, that is generally it is the compromised authenticity. Now, let us talk about the integrity, because we also talked about the authenticity, that what remains, and what is the also the integrity is another requirement one has to show, that how much of that the integrity. Let us take the integrity. Now, when we talk about integrity, we must understand that World Heritage Site, any World Heritage Site, either a city, part of a city, or an independent structure of a group of structures, or combined with the natural heritage and other, whatever is that, it has a context, and that context is generally is given by the buffer zone. We'll in the management we will talk more about the buffer zone, but and also it has a surrounding. It cannot be considered in isolation. So, when we talk about the integrity, this actually comes into the picture. So, there is a social and functional integrity, that means property includes all elements that justify the significance. Historical structural integrity, it does not suffer from adverse effects of development or neglect. and visual integrity, visual impact. And that, if you remember the Vienna example, which talked about that it is now put under the danger list, it's actually the visual integrity which was compromised in a heritage site, and that's why it put under the under a danger list of World Heritage Site. So, when we talk about the integrity, we are talking about the context, and this context is not only the physical context, it is also the social functional context, the historical structural integrity or the visual integrity. These three are the major important aspects of when we are talking about the integrity of a World Heritage property or any other property. And also, as I say, the relationship with the context and the setting is very important, and it has to be managed properly. Now, I will take again come back to the Rani Ki Vav example, that how, which is the Queen's Staple on Patan and Gujarat. You can see that it has been discovered, it is the subterranean structure, and beautiful sculptures are there, and which has been preserved because it was covered with silt. It was a beautifully kept. So, here it was a part of a society, and a very important aspect or function was that it was a water storage and a source of water. It is no longer like that, because Saraswati river has shifted or it was gone into subterranean. So, there is a historical or archaeological aspect of that, but it shows that type of an outstanding example of a staple which is there in many other places of India. So, now just imagine, as I told you, that there has to be a World Heritage Site boundary, there has to be a buffer zone and other. Now, we will talk about later, there is a now in India a law, Amritsar Act, which talks about that within 100-meter radius of these World Heritage or the even ASI protected monuments, it is a nothing can be built within that, and further 200-meter is a regulated zone. So, protected zone, prohibited zone and a regulated zone. Prohibited zone 100-meter, nothing can be done except very essential infrastructure requirements, because sometimes they are the living areas and something it has to be required. Now, very recently and within last few months, and this act is being amended to say that within that 100-meter or prohibited zone, that the government projects, public projects, but after certain sort of a impact analysis, it will be permitted. It was not there in the 2010 amendment, and there is a lot of anguish in the conservation fraternity and the people who are concerned about that, that this can really interfere with the integrity of the things, because there is a proposed railway line which is supposed to come within the 100-meter. Now, just imagine that this railway line is coming there, and when we are seeing this staple, it is not, there will be pollution effect, there will be vibration effect, and there is also visual impact, and this will really interfere with or compromise with the integrity of the site, and this is what has to be understood, and this is probably it has passed in one of the partially passed, and this is under a great debate now, that if it passes, a lot of these type of things can happen. So, this is what we talked about, and it can be put into a danger list because it will compromise this 100-meter radius. So, this is what is the aspect of integrity, we must understand that. So, integrity and its components, what are that? Integrity refers to the physical intactness or completeness of the cultural or natural heritage properties and their attributes that comprise its OUV. To satisfy the condition of integrity, the property should include all elements necessary to express its outstanding universal value and be of adequate size to ensure the complete representation of the feature and the processes which convey the property's significance, and not suffer from adverse effects of development or neglect. If the train line comes or the thing, it will really suffer Rani Ki Vav of the adverse effects of development and neglect. Even there is a proposal for in Secondra in Agra, that there is a flyover which is coming within the 100 meters. So, these are the things which actually interfere with the integrity. If we do not understand this aspect, we probably cannot take a decision, neither we can sort of convince other that what it means. So, the aspects of integrity, I quote, the physical fabric of the property or a significant feature should be in a good condition and the impact of deterioration process controlled. A significant proportion of the elements necessary to convey the totality of the value conveyed by the property should be included. Relationship and the dynamic functions present in the cultural landscapes, historic towns, or other living properties essential to their distinctive character should also be maintained. For example, historic city of Ahmedabad is now a World Heritage City. So, here not only the monuments is the everyday houses, normal houses, the street, the movement pattern, the community who are living there, lifestyle, activities, all are part of the integrity. And if that is not maintained, then it will jeopardize the value for which it has been ascribed as the World Heritage Site. There is an internal and external spatiality. For example, in a painting, this is a built-in spatial quality of the work of art relation to the external piece, relation of the painted surface to the architecture, relation of a historic building within the context of the street movement, part of the streets and other things. So, these are important part of the spatial things of integrity. So, authenticity and integrity, if we try to summarize, is the ability of a property to convey the significance, ability of the site managers to secure or sustain the significance of the site, ability to convey the significance, and ability to secure or sustain significance. So, these are the aspects which are reviewed while seeing a heritage site, World Heritage Site mainly, but also any other heritage site. We must try to understand that what it means by the authenticity and integrity. Now, we also say that the third pillar is the protection and management. It is not only the World Heritage Sites, there are different other types of properties which are of also of value, either regional sites or network, sub-regional sites or national sites or local sites. We must understand these in a total context and the relationship in the other, and try to protect and manage that, and that is a part what we will discuss in our next lecture under the protection and management of World Heritage Sites in particular, but also in general the protection and management of the heritage sites. As I told you that I have these are the references which I am following, and one must also refer the UNESCO World Heritage Sites for all the documents of authenticity, integrity, NARA documents and other. Thank you.